I want to start off by showing you what I think is by far the most tragic scene in all of Breaking Bad. Now, to explain why this is so tragic, first we need to make sure we all know what's going on here. In this scene, we have Badger and Skinny Pete, who are both friends with and many times sell drugs for Jesse Pinkman. The story of Jesse Pinkman is maybe one of the most complex and interesting stories, certainly in recent television and maybe ever. The son of an upper middle class family who ends up estranged due to his involvement in drug abuse and proliferation. We learn from his involvement and relationship with Walter White that Jesse was always kind of a burnout slacker kid in high school, with Walt having actually flunked him several years before Breaking Bad takes place. This is the first tragedy of Jesse Pinkman. Being born in the situation he was, he really had all the tools available to him to succeed. Even after getting into drugs, his family was more than willing to take him back and try again, several times over. But due to a combination of outside pressure and his own lack of motivation, he keeps finding himself back where he started. Now, this brings up a pretty important question. When was it too late for Jesse? His attitude in high school robbed him of a chance of getting into a good college, for example, if that's what he would have done in the first place, and his history of drug use made it so later in the show, when he covered for his little brother when their parents found the drugs in the house, his parents reacted the way they did. They kicked him out forever and pretty much severed all ties with him. But at any of these points, could Jesse have turned his life around? Now, with that in mind, let's go back to the first scene that I showed you. Once again, this scene shows us Badger and Skinny Pete having a moment in a music store. It doesn't really seem like much, and while we never really get a whole lot of details about these two side characters, this particular scene tells us a lot more than you might think. For Skinny Pete to be able to play a piano like this, there are two main possibilities. Either he taught himself, in which case he's an extremely talented musical genius, or more likely, his parents put him through piano lessons when he was a kid. Either way, this scene tells us one important thing. Skinny Pete had so much potential in his life, especially when you consider the more likely of the two scenarios that his family actually put him through lessons or something when he was younger. We don't really know anything about his particular socioeconomic situation growing up, but the fact that his parents would do that shows that they cared for him a lot. Someone wanted him and his life in general to be better. But his involvement with drugs and later his affiliation with Jesse Pinkman made all that talent, all that potential, meaningless. The hours of practice, the thousands of dollars spent, all gone. Maybe Skinny Pete wanted to go to Juilliard or start a band, or maybe he would have gone to LA and single-handedly saved jazz, but I guess we'll never know. Now, there's a point in the show when Pete and Badger try to get clean. They try to turn their lives around and salvage as much as they can, but it's their involvement with Jesse who tempts them to and ultimately gets them to use meth again that seals their fate, I guess you could say. And this, at least in my opinion, is truly the great tragedy of Jesse Pinkman. You see, Jesse himself had all the stars aligned to succeed, so much so that looking at his own personal story, he really had to go well out of his way to not succeed. What would his life have been like otherwise? It's hard to say. He was a slacker from a young age, and the drug use might have only amplified what was already there. But during his downward spiral, the people he drags down with him, sometimes on purpose, is the real damage being done. With someone like Skinny Pete, who we can pretty safely assume definitely had some sort of bright future ahead, that loss is undeniable. Breaking Bad is a show about a lot of things. Obsession, doing bad things for a good reason, or vice versa. But one theme that's present throughout the entire series is how your actions affect other people around you, even if you don't realize it. So when Jesse, for example, might think that, well, I'm only hurting myself, so who cares? It's my body, my life. But when you step back and look at the big picture, that doesn't really hold true at all. So for the last time, let's take a look at what could have been. Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching this video. You know, Breaking Bad is such a great show for a lot of reasons. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in the show, but one of the things I always really appreciated about the show was just how you know, you have the main overarching story with Walter White and Jesse and all that, but on the side with members of the family and of course with, you know, Skinny Pete and Badger and all that, there's so many side characters that are really fascinating and just kind of how they grow over the show, what's their story, how do the events of the show affect them as people. There's so much going on in every episode and every season. It's one of those shows that you can just watch over and over again and you catch new stuff every time. Now granted, watching a 5-season show over and over again can take a long time, but it's just, there's so much to learn and so much to get out of that show. It's one of the few shows I think I've seen where, you know, it goes on for 5 seasons, right? But it never really dips in quality. It just kind of keeps getting better, or at least the same. You know, a lot of shows after season 2 or 3, they kind of start to dip down a bit. But Breaking Bad's one of those shows that is just so good, the whole time. If you haven't seen it, I really recommend it wholeheartedly. You know, as a lot of you know, my channel's kind of going through this kind of, I don't know, discovery period explosion phase, and I kind of have these two main facets, right? I have the animations and then I have the video essays, and of course the video essays, being video essays, are supposed to be kind of serious and insightful and whatever, and then of course they have the animations that are pretty much just comedic based. And so hopefully, you know, everyone kind of gets what they want. I don't know, I'm in this spot where I'm not really sure how I should approach things, because, you know, I like doing both of these, and me as a person, because I'm a human being, I'm, you know, multi-layered, multifaceted, hopefully all of you are. So, you know, I have a humorous side, then I have a more serious side, and so hopefully, you know, for all of you watching, you know, if you just want the comedy, you get the animations. If you just want the video essays, you get those, and for those of you who want both, you get everything. And so that's kind of my approach to this, and hopefully I can keep doing it and everyone's happy and I'm happy and we all have a great time. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for sharing videos around and telling all your friends. I really appreciate it. Feel free to share this video with everyone and anyone you'd like to. Show it to grandma on the Facebooks, whatever you want. Anyway, thanks so much, and I'll see you all next time.